Ladies and gentlemen, Week 7 wide receiver rankings. We're going to tier list these guys, weekly rankings, rest of season rankings. We're going to talk about it all. And guess what? We have a new S tier receiver coming into week number 7. And the writing was on the wall. This guy's been climbing every single week. JSN is going to be my number 1 ranked wide receiver for week 7. Why? Listen, man, look at the stats. Let's go check out Flock Fantasy. Free tool. You guys can check this out for yourselves. Take a look at JSN, man. 13 targets, 8 catches, which he's been averaging every single game of the year. Brings in a touchdown, 162 receiving yards, the highest total of this season. And if you go back to even as far as last year, he didn't even come close to that outside of 1 week in week 9 where he dropped 180. So JSN is on an upward trajectory. This guy looks elite. Honestly, a tough matchup versus the Texans, and then he's on a bye week. But JSN looks like the real deal, and Scam Darnold is supporting him. Now, he would not be my number 1 receiver if not for Puka Nacua and his foot sprain. Now, the Rams are a good offense, but without Puka, they showed some struggles. So whether or not Puka is here for this matchup of Week 7, it's going to be very, very important for the Rams. They take on the Jacksonville Jaguars here in an overseas game Sunday morning. Puka Nacua, if healthy, probably is an A-tier wide receiver just because, if it's a foot sprain, he's not going to be at full speed. I saw him out there limping, right? So rest of season, I still have him this high, but the injury definitely bumps him down these rankings somewhere. Like I'm putting him in A tier, but if he's healthy, if he's out there, you start him. I'm going to rush St. Brown. I'm making this before Sunday Night Football, so we haven't seen some of these games. Now the bye weeks for Week 7 are the Bills and the Bills and the Ravens. So we'll talk about those players as we go. CeeDee Lamb, if he's healthy, this is where he would be. He'd be a top option. You saw what Pickens did, and we're going to talk about Pickens. Let's talk about him now. Let's talk about Pickens immediately, because George Pickens has to be one of the biggest risers. Where is George? George, where are you? Oh, we already had him pretty fairly ranked, because the writing was on the wall. We knew what was coming. Honestly, I'm not sure how high up you put him. I think we actually had him pretty fairly ranked. I think you put 10 million lower, but the rest of these rankings actually look solid. I haven't seen some of these guys' plays. Garrett Wilson was a straight up miss. We had Garrett Wilson too high, but there's better days ahead for him. Let's not panic. Garrett Wilson should still be started. AJ Brown is really volatile. To be completely honest, in terms of weekly rankings, I'd rather have Pickens and BTJ this week. BTJ with the breakout game. Listen, BTJ had, I think, 8 catches, 100 yards, 9 targets. One of those, he had something where it was called back. It was a touchdown called back for Travis Hunter offsides offensive penalty. BTJ could have had a much more massive day, but it was definitely encouraging and sign of things to come. Devontae Adams, if Puka is out, is a big riser. I like the top of these rankings. Talk about Jamar Chase real quick. Jamar Chase looked good with Flacco. A touchdown, decent receiving totals, close to 100 yards. So Jamar Chase encouraged by the fact that Flacco came in and made him have a good fantasy day. Ted McMillan didn't do anything except for 2 receiving touchdowns. He hasn't had a receiving touchdown through the first 5 weeks, had 2 in week 6, but he only had 3 catches. So you can't get too excited about anything there. And honestly, I'd rather have Garrett Wilson than AJ Brown. Call me crazy, but these are the rankings I like. Egbuka has a hamstring strain. That's tough. That is a tough one for sure here. You're going to have to monitor that. Now, good news, we're going to have somebody else rising up to B tier, somebody coming back from, I almost said injury, come back from suspension. Rashee Rice is immediately an A tier player. I think that he's going to be very, very good. Xavier Worthy deserves to be here as well. Haven't seen Sunday Night Football yet, but I think Xavier Worthy's a good bet. Emeka Egbuka, the hamstring strain. I don't know where to put him in these rankings. I'm going to leave him here. Keep in mind, he's probably banged out, then you have to drop him. Cortland Sutton had a terrible day. I'm honestly not sure how to handle it. Like MHJ had a concussion, injured. Cortland Sutton looked like trash. Pittman looked like trash. Olave continues to get good receiving usage. If we take a look at Olave, he hasn't done anything good. Like he hasn't been doing great with the targets he's been getting, but he's averaging 10 plus targets per game consistently. So Olave, I'm leaving him where he is. Flowers with the bad, play has actually looked all right. Now keep in mind he's on a bye week, so keep that in mind here. Debo, haven't seen Monday Night Football, but I think that where we have Debo and Terry ranked is actually fine. Keenan is too high. We're gonna bump Waddle up. Without Tyreek Hill, Waddle looked good, and Waddle, honestly, depending on the matchup, weekly rankings, we're gonna have to put him ahead of Zay Flowers. We're gonna put Waddle ahead of MHA with a concussion, and the fact that Kyler Murray is now banged up. So MHA actually has to fall in these rankings. Pittman has to fall in these rankings behind Olave. Flowers, I think, is pretty fairly ranked. We'll put him ahead of Pittman, but I think Pittman had a down game. There's better days ahead. Maybe even better matchups. I know Arizona. I think in tougher matchups, Pittman's honestly been thriving. Now, do we bump Waddle ahead of Sutton? I think that's probably where you draw the line. DK Metcalf should be ahead of Keenan Allen. DK Metcalf, debatably, should be in the tier above. But the thing with DK Metcalf, I know he had a very, very decent game in week 6. He's kind of been touchdown dependent for fantasy in my eyes. He's had a touchdown in every single game in the last 4 games. But outside of that, like the receiving totals in week 2 and week 3, 20 yards, 30 yards, and honestly thought it was worse. But he did have 130 yards on 95 yards. Now keep in mind, in week 4, he only had 5 targets, and he had like an 80-yard catch. Take that out, and it was bad. But he had them. He had those, and you can't keep ignoring him. And I'm done ignoring him. I'm going to put DK Metcalf up here, actually in C tier as well. Keenan Allen, Pierce Hall was always banged up. T. Higgins, he had a decent floor day of 11 points. Jameson Williams, I haven't seen. That's going to be a big one. I don't know who the Vikings quarterback is, but Ladd McConkey is going to ascend back up these rankings, and Keenan Allen has to drop. To be honest, this is where you start getting into the matchup-dependent options. Ladd McConkey, I would much rather trust this guy with his floor in my lineup. Pierce Hall's fine. McLaurin's fine. Higgins is fine. Jameson's fine. Addison's fine. Even Devontae, once you get to Devontae, you're in dead man's land. Like, I do not trust Devontae Smith at all. Devontae or Wan'Dale Robinson, I don't know. Wan'Dale just had a big game. Devontae, he's better talent, but he hasn't been doing it, right? So I like where D tier is at. Romeo Doubs continues to be the leading receiver for this Packers attack. I believe he had 9 targets here in week 6. 9 targets, 5 catches, 55 yards. Not bad. Now, Matthew Golden actually had almost 100 receiving yards. So Matthew Golden could potentially rise a couple spots, but he hasn't been having the actual high receiving totals and the high target. Thank you. Now, you said, surely you commented, bless you, right? But Jacoby Myers is somebody I'm interested in. Rashid Shaheed had a disappointing day. I've kind of been aggressively saying you can trust Shaheed in the flex, and maybe that's on me. Maybe I shouldn't be trusting Shaheed in the flex spot. Jacoby Myers has not had good games outside of week 1 and week 2 in terms of the target usage, so he's got to fall. I know Diggs had a bad day, man. We got to bump him up ahead of him. The fall of Jacoby Myers is going to be something that has to be studied. Jerry Jeudy had 13 targets, but he did nothing with them. Ridley is hurt. So Ridley, honestly, I don't even know if he's rankable. Tyreek is hurt. The Big Q was hurt, but if the Big Q is healthy, I'm honestly starting the Big Q over Keenan Allen, and maybe I'm starting him over Devontae Smith. Yes, I am. So the Big Q is still somebody I'd put in my lineup immediately, even coming off of the injury. Josh Downs is another big-time riser for the rest of season looks. It seems like Indiana Jones actually realized this guy exists. Had a touchdown, but keep in mind, outside of the touchdown, he wouldn't have had a good fantasy day. So I still want to see some more. I'm going to leave him here for now. I think that this is just dust. I think like Shakir, Coleman, Downs, Jeudy, there's a good case that these 4 guys, I think I'd rather start these 4 guys than Jacoby, than Golden, than Jennings, maybe than Shaheed, than Dobbs. So I think Shaheed and Dobbs have to fall down behind this range. Dobbs is getting good targets. Shaheed has good big play potential. I just feel like there's a safer floor with some of these guys ahead of him. But Jeudy is kind of dust. I don't know, man. The E tier is where you really have to struggle on your weekly flex decisions. Darnell Mooney, we'll see if he's healthy. This guy's always banged up. Keep an eye on Monday Night Football. Hollywood Brown's kind of dust. Wan'Dale Robinson has to jump ahead of these players. Travis Hunter continues to be a nobody. Cooper Kupp, deceptive touchdown. See if you can trade him. And really, all of these guys down here, nothing worth mentioning. Now I go to the projections and I take a look at, who am I missing from this list? Who is not even on here? Mike Evans. Mike Evans, if he's back from injury, Mike Evans immediately is somewhere right up here, probably where Ibuka is, depending on Ibuka's health. So Mike Evans has to be on this list. Glad I caught that. Wan'Dale Robinson, they have projected at close to 12 points. They still have some hope for Jacoby Myers, it looks like. Calvin Austin is projected 10 points, believe it or not. Where would I put Calvin Austin? I'd put Calvin Austin probably down here in F tier with Kupp. Malik Monroe had a bad week. I wouldn't really have him highly ranked. Slayton I wouldn't have highly ranked. Trey Tucker. Tucker's an interesting one. He had 12 points in week 6, 11 points in week 5. 5 targets, 70 yards, no touchdowns. Troy Franklin is borderline. I put him in F tier. Blake Washington I would put in F tier. Flournoy, that guy from the Cowboys, I'd probably put down here in F tier or G tier. And I think that's good for the weekly wide receiver rankings. Let me know who you got if you have any specific questions. Smash like and subscribe button. I'll see you boys in the final ranking video for the week. Defense, kicker, and tight end, and quarterback. See you there.